Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the World Talk. This is your rapid fire news section, and before we begin, I have some very sad news, as this will be my last rapid fire news section here on the World Talk. So, thank you all, and now we're gonna start off with the news. Why don't you start us off, Pedro?
It is indeed truly sad with what's happening to our beloved leader, Carlos. But even more sad is that Mark Zuckerberg, creator of Facebook, is once again under fire. It's under fire after increasing and ongoing allegations of misleading the public in the national elections during the United States. We know mostly through Donald Trump's misinformation campaign. President Joe Biden is showing cracks of signs. No, he is showing signs of cracking down on Mark Zuckerberg in the future. More so than what previous presidents have done with the corporation that is Facebook. And one of the few agreements that has been going on between the previous two presidents, being Biden and Trump, is that Facebook is something that should be dealt with. But it's obviously for two very different reasons.
Yes.
So Carlos, what do you think these two different reasons are?
Well, I mean, first we have to consider that Facebook either is a monopoly or is very close to becoming a monopoly in certain markets, and so that of course has to be dealt with because that can lead to a whole other slew of problems. And secondly, I would assume that at least Biden's administration and agenda through privacy concerns. What do you think, Pedro?
I mean, I would agree with you completely. Also, the whole Twitter situation with Donald Trump as well has kind of got him riled up, especially when it comes to these social media groups, and we all know that Facebook likes to have echo chambers, but that's completely besides the point for this rapid fire.
Right. Moving on, unfortunately, yet in the span of less than a week after the latest mass shooting in the United States, the last one in Atlanta, there was another mass shooting in Boulder, Colorado, and coming on the heels of that, Biden is urging further gun control and also threatening to sign an executive action banning assault weapons. The mass shooter who was shooting in a supermarket in Colorado left 10 dead, and has reignited further gun control debate, and including Democrats and moderate Republicans both agreeing that something has to be done about the gun epidemic in the United States. The National Rifle Association, or NRA, has successfully overturned Boulder, Colorado's AR, so automatic rifle ban, shortly before the shooting, so I think that's badly timed. It also should be noted that as soon as coming on the heels of the Atlanta shooting, everyone jumped to white supremacists being the shooter in Colorado. In fact, it was a Middle Eastern man who had no ties to ISIS. So this again, it's not only reigniting gun control debate, but also the white supremacy and racism debate in the United States. Dan, what do you think?
I think it's an absolute tragedy, but I feel like, in the past when we had incidents like Sandy Hook, for example, years back, people were actually taking the time to discuss, is it too soon to make this into a political thing? And I feel like today that's just gone out the window. So much has happened, especially since the Black Lives Matter protests began last May or so, that I feel like a lot of the time people are just already jumping to conclusions. And I feel like that goes for both sides of the aisle. I feel like more time should be taken to discuss things like, banning assault weapons, trying to reach some sort of compromise, or seeing if anyone can find any common ground before making all sorts of assumptions and illusions. And that definitely goes for just saying that the shooter is a white supremacist. Now, I've heard that some people say that he was actually in some form technically white because he was so light-skinned, he was white passing. But honestly, I think it's not an issue at this point of skin color. I think it's an issue of guns themselves. But again, I think it's too soon to politicize.
We should also, mention that the people who are saying, he was white because Syrians are considered white in some laws, is just, I think, in my view, or in many other people's, and could be the actual reason for some people saying this, is trying to make sure that the argument that white supremacy is to blame for all the hate crimes in the United States sticks. But calling a Syrian man white when he's clearly Middle Eastern is the same as calling all Latinos, Cubans white because they voted Republican in the election. You can't just change the facts. Facts don't change. Well, they can, but in this case, they clearly don't.
Agreed. Well, in slightly less pressing news, a Senate panel is to hold a vote to see about voting rights. Actually, it's going to be more of a general discussion. President Biden, in particular, has been pressured to focus on the voting rights of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. This also ties into more notable topics such as DC and Puerto Rican statehood, which have actually been on the rise in interest recently. with notable politicians such as the left-wing AOC calling into question if DC should also be made into a state, which was also challenged by a senator from South Dakota. What do you think about this, Pedro?
Well, it's kind of what we discussed a couple episodes ago on the opinion piece. There's a lot of, I don't want to say turmoil, but there's a lot of moving pieces being set up here in the U.S. What with all the executive orders being carried out by President Biden, now Donald Trump's impeachment trials, now this with the Senate vote, with the Senate panel voted to overhaul federal elections. But I really am hoping to see some improvement in the future as to the. I'm really hoping to see improvement, so as we maybe change the norm of these elections, and so maybe we can go back to what we saw in years past in terms of free and fair elections.
I agree.
In a little bit more of international news, the Suez Canal has been blocked after a container ship got stuck. This container ship was carrying shipments from China to the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and this blockade happened after this container ship was encountered with poor visibility as well as high winds from a sandstorm coming in from the west. Now, Carlos, the Suez Canal has historically been one of the driving forces behind international trade when it comes to when it comes to the sea. So, do you think that there's going to be a little bit of a fallout to this, or do you think it's going to be just the same?
I mean, it will depend on how long the container ship is stuck. I mean, knowing the importance of the Suez Canal and what it means to international trade, I assume and I hope that the authorities will be able to get the ship unstuck as soon as possible, and it won't be a crisis like what happened during the Yom Kippur War, in which the Suez Canal was blocked by the Israelis when they pushed into Egyptian territory, which nearly crashed the global economy due to not pass the Suez Canal. But in today's day and age, I'm pretty sure this will get resolved quickly. But it should open up debate, and clearly people should realize that if a ship can get stuck in high winds and sandstorms, and with poor visibility on top of that, we should find ways to mitigate the risk of another ship getting stuck. Perhaps in overhauling how the training a captain has to go through to pass through the Suez Canal, or making it more stringent security and oversight to make sure this doesn't happen again. But I don't think this will lead to widely felt economic fallout, because I'd assume it gets resolved quickly. Staying in Europe, we were in the Suez Canal, so it was technically Africa. But going back to Europe, as we discussed last week, the UK crime and policing bill, which many critics say is infringing on the right to protest, setting time limits on when protests can happen. And there have been protesters to protest against the protest bill, and 14 people have so far been arrested. Rallies have been organized to protest this new legislation, and the protesters are claiming that this is a peaceful protest and are sitting around in the street, but clearly not, since the people are getting arrested. We don't know that's the causes as to why they're being arrested, or if there was violence, if it was the police who started the violence in the first place. And just to reiterate what the crime bill does, as we did in the last episode, it would give more power to the police to handle non-violent demonstrations in England and Wales, and this is done through a variety of ways, as I said before, and most notably start and end dates and specific days in which protests can happen. Dan, your thoughts?
Honestly, the UK policing bill is one of the worst pieces of legislature, and one of the most transparent, or at least, you can see right through what they're getting at with this sort of legislation. I mean, you take a look at it and you think about what's been happening in recent months. It's not really a means to an end to sort of settle any issues that are actually going on that cause riots or protests in the United Kingdom. It's more of a way for the police to just say, okay, well, we don't like you doing that, but we're not going to change anything fundamentally. So we want more power so that we can actually handle these in ways that will maybe scare people. I think in some small way, it is maybe some of the things that are proposed in that bill are in small ways forms of tyranny or just controlling the people through violence. I think it's really, truly a despicable thing. So, I am glad to see people going out and protesting peacefully against this, and I hope that they continue until this bill hopefully dies in some form of House or Senate.
All right. Well, yes, but to go further onto that, in many places you need a permit to host a protest or a large showing, and would you say that's also an infringing on that right, or is that a necessary evil, quote unquote, in order to, to not cause security threats if a big meeting or event is happening close by?
Well, I don't want to get into a big discussion about the ethics of protests, but I feel like in some ways people are not always going to respect the law when it comes to protests, because kind of that's what it's about. It's about fighting against whatever law or government or ruling power is currently, is doing something that you don't like, and pushing back against that. I mean, would people really want to go to an office or a building owned by the government that they're protesting against and then file paperwork for that government, maybe have to pay a permit to that government just to hold a protest? No, I think it is in some sense a necessary evil.
Mm-hmm.
It's just another form of protest by doing it illegally.
Right.
Can I say that they're exempt from prosecution in that case? No, but people will do what people want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, finally, in other news, former Senator Bill Nelson has been selected as a new NASA administrator. Now, Nelson, who has had a lifelong and career interest in space travel, as well as having flown as a civilian in a space shuttle mission years ago, is now being selected as a new NASA administrator. There have been some concerns raised over this, namely that some worry that he will want to shift money away from commercial space initiatives to put more money into SLS. However, it's not entirely clear if this will be the case. However, we will keep you updated on this if any more should arise.
Now, this is very, very intriguing. Usually you see someone in the field of astronomy or somewhere along those lines, someone who's been there for some time, being elected as a new NASA administrator. But to have a former senator do that, it's going to lead to some, at least in my opinion, I think it's going to lead to some very interesting decisions being made on this part, or at least some very interesting influences or ideas being put forward. Now, if Nelson wants to shift money away from commercial space initiatives and put more money into SLS, I don't think that's the best move for NASA at this point. I think the commercial space initiatives. Sorry, I can't speak today. But yeah, I think the commercial space initiatives are definitely the priority right now for NASA in terms of that field. But once that's over, I'd be completely happy to see money get shifted into SLS.
I mean, I'm not entirely, I'm not debriefed on former Senator Nelson's qualifications or anything, but I think it is interesting because going into an administrative position, he's someone going into that sort of working mindset. He's not going to be an astronaut or anything, but he is going into that environment with the mindset of a senator, with the mindset of a politician.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually quite interested to see how he'll handle things as well.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's going to be very interesting.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to my final rapid fire news section. However, this is not the final rapid fire for the World Talk, as Pedro and Danny are the next phase of leadership here at the World Talk. However, if you truly are gonna miss me as much as I hope you will, I will be opening up a World Talk whenever I go to college. So stay tuned for that. I will have these to market that as soon as that is up and running. Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and don't forget to like and subscribe.